All right, I think we're ready to roll.
You're listening to Words Like That with Cole Powell, a storytelling podcast. All right, this is Words Like That. I'm Cole Powell. Today, I'm going to be reviewing a movie that I'm a little late getting to. I saw it when it came out a few weeks ago, but I've had a bunch of stuff going on. I haven't been able to get these podcast episodes produced like I want to. This is a review of Reagan, the biopic of the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, starring Dennis Quaid in the title role. I did a reaction to this trailer on the Randomine Records reaction series a few months ago, and I thought it looked pretty good. I'm a sucker for a good biopic. I'm a bit of a history buff. I like Dennis Quaid. It looked to be like he was doing a great Reagan impersonation. Movie looked pretty good, so thought I'd go check it out. And Quaid did a really, really great job as Reagan. In fact, the argument could be made he was a little bit too good in the impersonation, that it could have bordered on like more of a SNL type comedic parody. But Reagan is so well known, his mannerisms are so well documented on film, and his diction is so well documented on film that any actor that didn't just lean into it and go whole hog on impersonation probably would have felt inauthentic in the movie. So I think Quaid did a great job. Jon Voight, also in this movie, even as an octogenarian, has not lost a step. Still one of the greatest actors working today. Voight plays a Russian agent who isn't actually a real person. It's kind of an amalgam of several different historical figures, from my understanding. And he does a great job. But as good of a job as he does with the character's actually fairly superfluous for the picture, yet it's through that character that the entire film is framed. And the first scene of the sequence starts out with this character. He's narrating the life of Reagan. This Russian agent is narrating the life of Reagan to a modern day Russian up-and-coming politician, which is kind of really a weird framing. And there's a lot of narration from Jon Voight's character throughout the movie. And when you're dealing with a medium like film, you should really be showing instead of telling, unless it's a genre that lends itself to telling, like maybe a film noir or something. And there's a lot of telling going on in this film. Literally, Jon Voight telling what happened in Reagan's life. So starting out with that framing, with that sequence of Jon Voight's ex-Russian spy telling the life of Ronald Reagan, we kind of started the movie off on a bit of an off note. And the rest of the acting, most of it anyway, was not that great. Certainly not the level of Dennis Quaid and Jon Voight. In particular, I was very disappointed in Penelope Ann Miller's portrayal of Nancy Reagan. Penelope Ann Miller, a veteran, like been in the business 40 years at this point. And her acting really came off very melodramatic, very Lifetime, Hallmark Channel original. And a lot of the other acting in the movie did too. The dialogue also had that same made-for-TV, again, Lifetime original, Hallmark Channel vibe to it. And it also did a lot of telling instead of showing, like the dialogue was meant to, instead of you getting from the interactions organically or what was going on screen organically, they're kind of telling you through the dialogue what's going on. There was also a lot of direct address in the dialogue, and that's usually a mark of poor writing, at least in today's screenwriting. 70 years ago it was okay. And what I mean by that is a lot of the characters, whenever they addressed each other, they would call the name of the person that they were addressing in every sentence. So if you got Dennis Quaid and Penelope Ann Miller as Ron and Nancy talking to each other, Dennis Quaid would say, "Well, blah, 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 Nancy." And then Nancy would come back with, "Well, yada, 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 Ron." And, that's not natural dialogue. It's very heavy-handed, kind of amateurish. It's particularly jarring because when the dialogue focuses on actual historical scenes and famous quotations from Reagan, and there are a bunch of those in there. It works because it's real life. It's actually what happened. It's actually what was said. And then when you get out of that and get into the more scripted Hollywood for the movie scenes to move from point A to point B, it's just really clunky. It was directed competently, though. There wasn't anything in the cinematography, in the directing, that necessarily elevated it really high above the middle of the pack cinema, but it was cinematic. It did not, the directing, the look of the film did not have that made-for-TV look that some of the acting did and the script did. And that was something that I was afraid of from the trailer. That was one thing I saw in the trailer. There were some things that made me think, well, maybe the actual film quality isn't going to be as good as a fully produced film that had a full studio release behind it. But that wasn't the case. It actually is shot like a movie, even if it isn't the highest caliber. I think it would have been a better piece of art and entertainment if it had been a documentary, but with Dennis Quaid and some really high-class actors hired to come in and act out and recreate some of the major points in Reagan's life and presidency, I think it would have been a better piece of art entertainment that way, although it wouldn't have made as much money at the box office. Probably would have been a TV release, because documentaries just don't do well at the box office. It certainly wouldn't have made what this film has made as a narrative film, but I do think it would have been a better piece of art. It's kind of the opposite of the men who invented America, or the men who built America. I can't remember the exact name of the series I watched. This was like 10 or more years ago. History Channel did this series, and it was a documentary series, but they had actors, wasn't even known actors, but actors kind of acting out the scenes of the famous people who, like the Vanderbilts and stuff. And it was a really well done series, and it was done so well that you kind of wish that the whole thing had just been a scripted narrative series instead of a documentary. And this is the reverse. It's a scripted narrative film, and you wish they'd have just made it a documentary with some intercut scenes with some really high quality acting to reenact these important moments in Reagan's life. How has this been received? The critics pretty much universally hate it. The last time I looked on Rotten Tomatoes, I'll have the updated version on screen on the video. The last time I looked, it was at like 19% critic score, and the audience score was 98%, so you got that giant disparity, which we've seen a lot of in recent years. I've talked about that a little bit, and I want to do a full video on some of the stuff that's going on with Rotten Tomatoes, how they've kind of admitted that critics have lost a lot of credibility. But when you dig in to those ratings, you see it's kind of divided along political lines. Like, the critics hate it because of its politics. The audience loves it because of its politics. But that element, the political element, isn't really something I look for whenever I'm reviewing a film. So for me, I'd give this an objective quality rating of 5 out of 10, just kind of right in the middle of the pack, mediocre, because it does have a couple of great performances. It does have some really good scenes. It's shot competently, but then almost every other element of the movie falls flat. On a personal enjoyment level, because I do like biographies, I do like histories, I do like Dennis Quaid, Jon Voight, and also because at the end of the picture, they delved into the end of Reagan's life with his Alzheimer's diagnosis, and as somebody who lost a grandparent to that awful disease, it was handled really well, showing what it does to the patient, what it does to the family, and it really hit me on a personal level. So I would probably give this a personal enjoyment rating a little bit higher than the quality rating. I'd give it a 6 out of 10 for personal enjoyment. As far as whether it's worth your time to go see, based on my own experience with the movie and what I'm seeing from critics and audiences, if you really, really like this type of political biography, or if you're a fan of Ronald Reagan specifically, go see the movie. You'll probably love it. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more elevated artistically, a little bit better made piece of cinema, probably going to want to skip this one. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Have you seen Reagan? If not, are you planning on it whenever it comes out on streaming? Let us know in the comments, or you can send an email to randominerecords@yahoo.com, or you can be on the lookout for an article adaptation of this episode on my website, colepowell.net, and you can comment on there. And that's going to wrap up this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.
That. Theme, Words Like That by Cole Powell. Lead in by Ryan Purser. From Wicked Woman by Four-Way Stop. Original cover photo by Kelly Bagwell. Recorded at Randomine Records. Section 107 of U.S. copyright law allows for the fair use of copyrighted material for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, parody, or research.